everyone, and welcome to Just Add Champagne. This is a special episode for International Women's Day. I am going to be joined by some of my wonderful friends in this industry, and we're covering all bases. We've got people in restaurants, we've got people that own their own businesses, and we've got people that even work on the winery. So this is going to be a great way for us to hear a little bit about women and the role that we're now playing in this wine industry. So as always, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We'll be moderating that as we go through. We do record all of these sessions. So we will put these on YouTube once we are finished. So you'll have somewhere to refer back to. We're going to be tasting some great wines tonight. So super excited to have that. And don't forget, if you have any questions, or if you want to actually, we want to hear from you. We want to hear the engagement, and we're going to have some questions and polls for you, just like we always do. So, but without further ado, I would love for my guests to introduce themselves so that you can learn a little bit about them. And, what's your background? What do you do in the industry? And, what brought you into wine? So Andrea, why don't you kick us off?
Hi, I'm Andrea Jackson. I am the Visitor Center Manager at Mumm Napa out here in Napa, California. So if you come visit us for a tasting, that's kind of what I'm in charge of. We try to create great guest experiences every time you visit, and so you'll get to taste some of our more exclusive wines when you come out, wines that are not available in the grocery store. But I've been in the business in the hospitality industry for 10 years. As most people in the industry do. This is my second career. So I was a special needs educator for 10 years. Wine was what kept me going every weekend. So learning about wine, experiencing wine. I was a wine geek when I wasn't in the wine business. So after 10 years of working in the education field, I decided to go full bore into wine. And my husband and I moved down to California in 2010. And I took the deep dive into hospitality. Started right next door at Con Creek Winery, spent 5 years there, and have slowly worked my way through events, managing tasting rooms of various sizes, and have now ended up at Mumm. And I've been here for about a year and a half. This is the most willing and able team I've ever worked with in the business, and I absolutely adore them. Very committed team of people. So I'm really glad to be here, and really glad to be with you, Elise. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, no, thank you so much for joining us. I was so pumped to know that we were able to have you on today. I know you and I got to meet. It was a little over a year ago when all of the brand ambassadors from across the world for the sparkling portfolios came to Napa, and we all went to Mumm, and we had the best time. It was a lobster roast. We had all kinds of gorgeous sparkling wines that are only available when you're actually at the winery. So if you haven't visited Mumm Napa yet, I would definitely recommend it. It is an amazing view. The hospitality staff is incredible. Even just the tour is super fun, and you learn a lot about how we make sparkling wine in California. So thank you so much, Andrea. And I'm going to kick it over to Michelle. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm Michelle Bonds. I'm the founder and owner of Trova Wine Market in Dallas, Texas. It's a brand new concept. I've been working on it for a few years, and we just opened in July, which is a strange time to open a new business, but we're fighting through it. It's been fun regardless. Like Andrea, wine is also my second career. I was in communications and marketing for about 10 years, and early in my career got introduced to some people in Chicago who were very plugged into the wine scene and teaching me all kinds of new things. And I had goals to know what they knew as I got later in life. And so there was no time like the present. A few years ago, I started studying for the Intro to Master Sommelier course, and just loved it and decided to take the plunge into this new business. So we've been open for, I guess, almost 8 months now. It's going great. I have an awesome staff. Really enjoying meeting members of the community, sharing my passion for food and wine with them. And I'm happy to be a part of this today.
Absolutely. And Matt and I were just at Trova this last week to drop off the wines to you, because you got to go on a little getaway to Park City. So we're off to you for being able to take
a vacation.
Especially especially as a business owner, that's got to be a very difficult thing to be able to balance. So I'm so glad you were able to. But I have to say, your staff were so amazing. I had such a great time with Donna and with Andrew. They really know their stuff, and you can tell that they love working for you. So bravo for that. And I love that we have that connection, here in Dallas, so that we have a place to go, because, I've been wanting to be a regular somewhere forever, but it was so hard to do because I was traveling all the time. So now you're probably going to see way too much of me sitting at your bar drinking wine.
There's no such thing. Come anytime.
Well, we will have a third guest joining us today. She is actually on another virtual call. So if you talk about the hustle, she's definitely doing it. Her name is Cassie Sakai. So she'll be joining us a little bit later, and we will introduce her. But I think the theme of these initial introductions that I'm hoping that all of you are kind of writing down right now, that are our viewers today, is that it's never too late to start your career in wine. If it's something that you love, go after it. If it's a passion point, we want to see you here with us. So I hope that that's definitely the message that you're all taking as well. So this International Women's Day is Monday, so March 8th. And this is something that I've definitely gotten into over the years, supporting other women in the industry, not even just in wine, but just in general. I have two younger sisters, and so, that female empowerment message is really special to me. I actually used to have a shirt that said, "Someday a woman will be president." I don't have it now. It's probably buried somewhere in my childhood home, or, during the course of our many moves, my mom may have donated it. So hopefully there is a young girl somewhere wearing it right now and like really feeling, that power, come into herself is my ultimate goal. But of course, they always have a theme. And so I wanted to be able to kind of dig into that theme a little bit today, and would love to hear both of your perspectives. I'm happy to offer my own as well. The theme this year is choose to challenge. So I'm super curious what you both think, that means, and how maybe you have really developed that throughout the course of your career, even before wine and now in what you do today.
Oh,
I know, very loaded question. I hope you're ready.
Right. Wow. I can go first since I started first. Choose to challenge for me means preparing myself to lead others every day, getting up and showing up, being prepared to, help others do the same thing, show up the right way, show up in, with spirit, and also to partner with other female business owners and support them. And we just, our cheese vendors that we have these wonderful, I should have brought one with me, these wonderful cheese plates that go along with our Oak Terrace experience if you ever come out here. And she's a Black-owned, it's a Black-owned female business. So one of the rare few here in Napa. And so we were able to partner with her. She's an excellent chef. So it just means showing up every day and finding ways to lift others up, especially other women in our sphere of influence.
Absolutely. I love that. What about you, Michelle?
tough to follow, Andrea.
Oh, sorry.
So for me, I would say at the moment, that means just embracing and going for it. You know, everybody has dreams that they, you know, sit around daydream about, career ambitions, life ambitions, and you say, you know, okay, I really want to do that, but actually challenging yourself to like grab a hold of it and go for it. That's what that means to me. I mean, it's a tough step to take. You'll regret it for different reasons along the way, but then you'll unregret it the next day after everything goes fine. But that's how I choose to embrace that.
Excellent. It's so nice to have, you know, powerful women, you know, who are so willing to go out there and be, you know, that generation that can inspire the next. So I think that you're both doing wonderful things for that. And, you know, when I started in the wine industry, there weren't very many women at all. And, you know, now there are so many. And I think that that really is telling for the fact that we're going after our dreams more. And so for me, that's kind of what Choose to Challenge became for me when I was growing up, is that I don't have to accept what society thinks I'm capable of. You know, I can go out there and I can, you know, I can be, you know, the best, you know, at whatever sport, or I can do this, or I can, whatever it is. And so now, you know, in the wine industry, especially, women have pretty great palates. And I think that that's something that has been, addressed already, like on the normal scale, is that the way that our brains work, we just kind of, the folds inside of our brains hold on to those aromatic characteristics a lot harder. And so I'm not surprised that there are many more female somms now. There are many more female entrepreneurs in the wine industry, especially in the marketing department. At Pernod Ricard USA in the marketing department, I'm pretty sure we are 95% female for the wine and champagne team. So, it's absolutely incredible to see these kind of improvements overall and, how we're able to move everything forward. But I'm curious, especially, it's not always easy. Right? We don't always have someone who's willing to reach a hand out and say, take my hand, I will lift you up to where I am. And so I'm curious if you have ever had, any sort of experiences where you have faced gender inequality, when you have been either at work or in your personal life, or even when you were applying for a job. And if you're willing to maybe share, a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, I can start again since that seems to be the order we're going. Yeah, I one of my first jobs in the wine business, my boss at the time, the manager of the tasting room, decided to move on and was actually promoted within the company, but they made me wait for 6 months to get the position, and gave me the position as an interim, wouldn't give me any extra pay, all of that kind of stuff, made me wait and wait and wait, and ultimately I was able to get the position, but I was under so much scrutiny from that point on that it really did end up in, not a great situation for myself. And, I know your follow-up question is, and how did you overcome? And I'll have to be honest that I didn't overcome that very well. And it was a very difficult moment for me to move past. It took me several years. So, and then, every day here in the visitor center, one of my supervisors that work for me. He's an awesome guy. But when people want to complain, they don't come to me, they go straight to him, and it's like, hi, I'm the manager, you can talk to me. But, he handles it very well most of the time, and I don't need to step in. But there have been some times where I've had to say, I think I'm going to be the best person to help you. And that's how I've dealt with it. So.
For me, it's ongoing. It's comical at times actually, but every day I am in Trova working in some way, shape or form. And on the daily, I probably get asked when my husband will be there so that they can speak to him about anything related to the business. And it's actually my business. My husband is very busy with his own job. And as a result, is not coming there most of the time. He's one of our favorite lunch customers, but otherwise he's busy with his own stuff. And so that's always a bit of a discussion I have to have. And then still sometimes they would rather talk to my manager, Cameron, because he's a male and he does know a lot. So I don't want to discount him, and he does answer the questions quite well. But when it comes down to it, it is my business, and it's unfortunate sometimes that it's a thing that you have to drive home and you have to convince people of. But overall, it's just something that we'll probably be dealing with for a little while in the future.
I think that's true. And I'm sure Chad would be a wonderful employee for you at Trova.
I'm sure. A little stubborn,
day,
but
it's your name on the business. So, oh gosh. I mean, I remember first starting in this industry and how funny it was sometimes, especially when I was working in retail. I experienced it a little bit more there than I did when I was working in restaurants. And, I was the manager of the wine department, so if someone wanted to know where something was, if they needed an order, if they needed some kind of recommendation, and even just the tasting area that I had put together with the Cruvinet system, that was all me. And so, I'm still young at this point. I'm only 25, 26. And, so ages ago, and, someone would come in and every once in a while, it was almost like they were testing me, one, because I was young and also because I was a woman. And there was a gentleman who came in once, and this is before the idea of mansplaining. And he tried to mansplain to me that Cabernet Sauvignon is Sauvignon Blanc is Cabernet Sauvignon without the skins. And it's just like, you try so hard to like remain neutral and not play into it and just say, oh, that's a really interesting fact. Where did you read that? However, Sauvignon Blanc is its own grape. And let me show you where the ones from Bordeaux are, and the ones from New Zealand, and the ones from California. And you just kind of play that game. And, because of course you never want to make anyone feel poorly about the way that they've interacted with you, but you kind of just have to rise to the occasion to figure it out. So that's where we are. But I'm also curious to kind of end on a positive note before we get into our actual tasting portion. I'm curious if there are any female role models that you've had throughout the course of your life that have really helped to shape who you are now. I mean, for me personally, obviously, my mom, she's on the call right now. She was in the American Association of University Women, and, and she was a working mom and all of these things. And she really showed us how balancing your work and home life can be possible. She stayed home for a while until my sisters, were old enough to go back to school. And I was just always very enthralled with the fact that she cared so much, not just about her own family, but about women in general, and really pushing that forward to making sure that more women were going into STEM, that more women were having the choice to work and getting higher education. And so that was really inspiring for me. Of course, there are female, like female winemakers and all of that too, that I'm like super geeked out on. But mom was definitely the number one, in that particular. So I'm curious who yours are. So why don't we start with Michelle this time, and then Andrea, you can tell us.
Sure. I mean, I guess my mom as well. She's an exceptional woman. She's actually deaf. She doesn't know sign language. She's what they call not deaf with a capital D, because she's not fully immersed in the culture. She reads lips and relies on that, and throughout her life was a professional musician. She studied music performance and started when she was young, and they didn't discover her hearing disability until she was 8 or 9 and had already fully progressed in playing the violin and things, and she didn't want to quit. And so she kept going. And, there are just crazy stories with her trying to pursue her education, in that she couldn't get into a master's program at a college she wanted to go, or at a university she wanted to go to, because they back then gave actual hearing exams, and she couldn't pass them because of her disability. And then Northwestern didn't have a hearing test, and so she auditioned and got in per usual, and graduated with a master's from there. And I mean, if that's not a story about keeping going, I don't know what is. So she's definitely a role model. And then additionally, just throughout my career, just some female executives at various companies I worked for were always people to look up to and aspire to be. So several.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's really easy to get emotional about these things when we think about them. Yeah. And Andrea, what about you?
I would say my mom definitely, she was a hardworking lady. She raised 5 kids. I'm the oldest of 5, and worked full time. Yeah. And so, there was definitely, she taught me how to, look out for myself in a way, like choose my own path. But I also have like Michelle, I have some, really great role models in this business that I've looked up to. A woman I worked for at St. Michel Wine Estates was my boss there, the director of our department. And she really taught me how to be an empathetic, vulnerable leader. And that really became my philosophy in leadership and team management. And, hats off to Vita DeLong for what she helped me learn to develop as a leader.
Wow. Incredible. Well, I'm so glad to hear that we've all had those really positive experiences, because of course it doesn't always happen that way. And some of our viewers have also had some really great experiences here. And of course they all support us for, being big fans of our moms. And of course, people are saying hooray for women, which is definitely That's how we feel as well. And there's a lot of trends. I think many of us on this call today have had very similar experiences. Jen, thank you definitely for bringing that up. And I'm so happy that we actually get to talk about this in a forum where we will be able to reach so many people, which is great. But we do have a question already. And someone has said that, and it's actually my mom, she's one of the best engagement viewers every time. So she said she wants to change her career to wine, but she wanted to ask us, how do we as women in the world of food and wine, how do we stay so fit? So I think that's something that we can definitely answer. Matt and I got a Peloton, and that's been helping me, because of course we're still trying to be safe during the course of COVID. So we haven't been able to really get in there, back into the gym or anything like that. But that's what we've been doing. How about you guys?
I think I got in a period of time in work where I just felt like I was so important and so crucial that I could not be bothered to spare an hour for myself, even to go to the gym. And that is extremely not true. So finding just making yourself take an hour for yourself and no excuses is really important. I'm a fan of Orange Theory Fitness. It's, it's an hour, it's structured, it's high intensity. I don't get bored. So I'm into that. But I think just getting to the mindset where you can afford that hour for yourself is important.
Absolutely. I agree. Self-care is very important. Andrea, what about you? I mean, living in wine country, I feel like there are so many opportunities to get outside. Is that a big part of your program?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're here to talk about women today. And I feel like, an accountability partner is some of the best, one of the best strategies to keep you going and keep you outside and keep you walking. And a lot of the world's problems can get solved on a long walk in nature. So that's primarily what I do. But I will also say that, I've lived and worked for the last 10 years in tasting rooms, and it's a lot like working in a restaurant. So I'm on my feet quite a bit. Not as much here at Mumm Napa, but in my past roles, definitely. And that has kept me really fit. One of my doctors, a physician that I had a long time ago said, you just set the time, and that's the time to exercise. So he said, at 9 o'clock we walk, kind of thing. So adding it into your routine and making it, even if it's a 10-minute yoga session, is kind of how I keep myself going physically.
That's great.
Yeah.
For those of you who are still working full time, and whether you're working from home or even still, going into an office, I've learned the art of blocking off my calendar. If there's time that I know that I need for myself, and it doesn't necessarily change my availability for people being able to reach me. It's just that at least I know during this block of time, whether it's 30 minutes or an hour, that is spoken for, so that no one can put anything on my calendar for that particular time frame. So, and especially being on Central Time versus East Coast or even West Coast, I get caught in the middle of a lot of meetings. So, whether it's a lunch break or, if it's something where it ends up being really early morning, or especially if we're doing something with France. So please block off your calendars to make time for yourself. It will definitely help. So we're going to get ready for the first tasting, and we're going to do the Mumm Napa DVX, and Andrea's going to take us through it, which is super exciting. However, while we're doing that, I would love to engage the audience here. We want to know from you guys. We talked about our role models. We talked about our professional, landscape and what it looks like and how we've gotten there. We would love to know from you, the audience, who are some of your favorite female winemakers that are out there today? And I have a feeling I know some of the answers that are going to come through from some of my family members. But we would love to know. So here we are, Mumm Napa DVX 2012. At Pernod Ricard USA, we're actually incredibly fortunate to have several female winemakers at a lot of our brands. Campo Viejo, for example, actually has 4 female winemakers across their whole category. Elena being the #1. She's been with them since 1985. And, Brancott, we have female winemakers there. Severine Fersen, who we'll talk about later at Perrier-Jouet. So it's kind of cool to see all of these women. And of course, at Mumm Napa, we are super fortunate to have Tammy Lutz. So we would love to know what it's like, working with her. She's been working with Mumm Napa since I think 2003.
Yeah.
Getting to know a little bit about her, and over this last year and a half that you've been with Mumm Napa, what has that been like?
Tammy is, first of all, an exceptional winemaker. Her wines, in my opinion, are, you know, elegant and nuanced and well balanced. And, you know, she really respects the grape and makes sure that what the characteristics that should be there are, but also loves to play with, you know, the nose and the aromatics of the wine and that kind of thing. She's also just a really great resource. So she understands how wine and lifestyle go together, and she's a great resource for us. So if I'm developing a new cheese plate and a new tasting, she's my first resource. She's the first person I go to, and she's so willing and able to help us. And so, you know, she knows what cheeses taste like. She knows how her wines go, pair well with them. And so she's an excellent resource. She also leads a team of really great people. So she has a team of 4, and including herself, more than half of them are female. So Maitri and Ashley are her 2 assistant winemakers, and both really talented ladies as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I love that. Whew. And Mumm Napa, you know, they get a lot of visitors. I mean, I think that for a while there, we were actually beating Jameson as our #1 brand home visited, which is really incredible. So, and that a lot of that is kudos to you for running that tasting room, because I mean, having all of those people come through, and the last year, of course, was difficult. But have you ever dug into the demographics of the visitors that come through, and maybe like what percentage of them are male versus female?
You know, I can give you anecdotal information. We see a lot of bachelorette parties and 21st birthdays and, you know, those kinds of things. And Galentine's Day is a big deal around here. And so is Mother's Day. So, you know, people celebrate, you know, women with bubbles. And so we do have a large portion of visitors that are women. I would probably say it leans into the 60 to 65% of our visitorship is women. But men love their bubbles too. And so, you know, we do see a lot of great partners and great lovers of bubbles here that are men as well. But yeah, we do see a lot of women. Don't have exact numbers, but.
No, of course. I'm just always curious, but that makes sense. And I love how you said we celebrate women with bubbles. I mean, we definitely do. And so I think that, you know, that's wonderful that especially at Mumm Napa, we're able to do that. And it looks like a lot of our viewers, oh, hey, Cassie. Welcome to the party. But a lot, yeah, we were just talking about Mumm Napa and, you know, the amount of women that come through. I think sometimes it's more than 500,000 visitors a year in a typical year. And we were just talking about how a lot of that is bachelorette parties and how we like to celebrate women with bubbles, which is perfect.
I love that.
Yeah. And we got some great, some great answers as well, in terms of who some of people's favorite female winemakers are. And Tammy is very popular, as we all know. She's very approachable. I've been on some of her virtual events before, and she's a total gem. And it looks like, yeah, Coruscant, people are loving that. Jacobs Creek, Trina at Jacobs Creek as well. So that's really cool. And actually, Nicole did call out Ashley and Maitri on the Mumm Napa winemaking team. So it's great that people know what's going on in the behind the scenes. You know, it's super important. And it looks like there are some others as well. So I was very happy to see that there are so many women that are really being able to enact change within our industry and are leaders in our industry, whether it's in the front of house or even if it's in the back of house, for example, CEOs or, you know, as a tasting room director, like people don't necessarily always know that it's you who's making their experience so magical. So that's pretty great. And just as a reminder for everyone, when you are submitting your answers into the chat, make sure that you put the little drop-down menu into all panelists and attendees so everyone can see what you want to say. But you came at the perfect time, Cassie, because we are going to be drinking.
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. And we'll let you introduce yourself a little bit when we get to that segment so that you are fully prepared for that. But we've talked a little bit about the progress, you know, some of the examples about how there are more women in wine right now. I'm actually going to share a link that it's Wow Sonoma, so Women of Wine Sonoma. They've made a list of all of the female either owned or winemaker properties in California. But I'm super curious, Andrea, take us through DVX. You know, like what is DVX and how does it kind of go beyond the cuvées that people normally see from Mumm Napa, maybe in a retail space?
Yeah, so DVX is our tête de cuvée. So it's our head blend, right? It's the first blend we make. We only have one rule in making DVX, and that is that it has to be 50-50. It has to be 50% Chardonnay and 50% Pinot Noir. DVX, the letters are in honor of our founding winemaker. Let me move that water glass out of the way. Our founding winemaker, Guy Deveau. And he, found Napa on a mission that he called the Lafayette. I think it was the Lafayette mission or the Lafayette project, to find a really wonderful place to produce sparkling wine in the U.S. And so we landed in Napa. DVX is, we not only are we, is it the best lots, but they're the best lots selected in a blind tasting. And they, Tammy is so committed to it being a real, real objective analysis that they even use black glasses. So any kind of sensory impact that the color or the viscosity that you can see would have on their opinion is completely masked. And so, they'll pick, it's usually less than 10, it's 10 lots or less, 50-50 Pinot and Chard. And for the 2012, which was an amazing vintage, by the way, here in Napa, it was like a perfect, increase in heat, and then it decreased, and the grapes were ripe, and it was just a really wonderful year. 2012, we selected 9 lots for this particular blend. So primarily our lots come from down in Carneros region here in Napa, or maybe over in Sonoma. As far north, I believe, as Anderson Valley. So we have lots of growers that we source from, but it's just the best lots that go into DVX. We do produce the DVX Rosé as well in the same tradition. So once the wine is created, the blend is made. They actually barrel fermented a little bit of this wine. So a little bit of the 2012, so it was about 30% was barrel fermented. So you'll get a little toast on the palate, maybe even on the nose. A little bit of spice maybe, and just a really rich, texture. And so that is due to the very, very well used or older barrel that goes into fermenting the DVX. This particular vintage, we were able to garner a 94-point score with Wine Spectator, which is a great feat as far as sparkling wine is concerned in California. And it's almost sold out. So our members are going to get it. We'll have a few bottles left over for them, but we are currently selling in the tasting room and tasting in the tasting room the 11 DVX, which is a fantastic vintage, even though it was a tough year, and the 13. So you have access to those as well. But just a little bit on the technical side of this wine, on the residual sugar, it's under 1%, so it's 0.89% sugar dosage. So it's nice and bright and acidic. Which will give it a really great longevity. You can store it, age it for about 10 to 15 years. So it's a great wine to keep for special occasions. But, for me, that's any occasion where I get to celebrate other women, right? That's what we're here to talk about. So we have one other couple we've been spending a lot of time with. And so this featured prominently on the dinner table for birthdays and anniversary. And they actually had a baby this year too. So we celebrated with a little bit of DVX Rosé in that case. But it's for anything you want to celebrate. It pairs well with celebrations, we'll say that. But as far as food is concerned, it's a great pairing. The foods that we've paired it with this year, Eggs Benedict, it goes really well with brunch. We've had some cold smoked salmon, some grilled salmon. Mushroom risotto is with the barrel, toastiness, is a perfect pairing. The DVX has some nice bright acidity, so it cuts through some of the richness really, really well. So those are just a few of the foods we've had with DVX.
Oh my goodness. I mean, is anyone else salivating right now? I'm like, it's definitely dinner time.
I'm starving, and all of those sounded so good.
Yeah, it's a great wine. It's a great
Fantastic.
wine.
Well, and I didn't know about the barrel fermentation actually. So this is why I love doing these, is because you get to learn so much, even about the wines that are technically in my own portfolio. I don't get to focus on Mumm Napa as much. And so it's so cool to actually get to hear it, from you while you're, on site in the vineyards, tasting everything.
Right. Yeah.
So, absolutely fantastic. Love that. Oh, well, what about Michelle? Had you ever had this wine before?
I actually have. I visited, not the specific vintage, but I visited Mumm's tasting room on a trip to Napa. I think it was about 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. And we took home a bottle of this one. It was one of the ones that we purchased. So I was very excited to see it whenever you sent the images for this event.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
delicious.
And Cassie, what about you? Have you actually visited Mumm Napa?
I haven't. I grew up in the Bay Area, funnily enough, and I didn't spend any of my adult life there. So I feel like I'm playing catch up every time I come back to visit my dad. So I'll definitely have to make it a trip next time. But actually this time last year on the 1st, they have a Napa Marathon. I actually ran last year and I ran by Mumm Napa and I actually took a picture. So it's kind of, I feel like this is fortuitous and now I'm obligated to come next time I'm in the Bay.
You absolutely are obligated. Just kidding.
Well, let us know because maybe we can do a webinar reunion at Mumm Napa together.
That would be amazing.
I love that.
Right?
They have such a great patio and good cheese. I really enjoyed the cheese selection personally.
It's my favorite food group.
Right. Yeah.
As well with everything. Yeah.
Well, speaking of food and, the way that we pair it with wine. So Michelle, we're going to turn the conversation over to you while we continue to enjoy the glass of DVX before we get into
Sure.
But so we want to know a little bit about you and kind of so you gave us a little bit of your background, but now let's kind of dig into what it's like to be a woman and an entrepreneur. So, why don't we, kind of tell us, like you said that this was a multi-year process, like in your brain before it became reality. Why don't you walk us through a little bit about how that actually happened?
Yeah. So I lived in Chicago for about 7 years and we got cold and left and moved to Texas. And to make a long story short, in between living in Austin and Dallas, we did a little popover in Argentina and lived in Buenos Aires for 90 days and before moving to Dallas to start jobs. So while we were in Argentina, it just kind of carried over all the love I was having for wine and what I'd been learning about it. And I just really appreciated and enjoyed some of the venues that they had where you were able to really just sit and experience wine because they have such lengthy dinners and everything is all natural and you can eat lighter if you want to. And there was just the opportunity to let wine drive your meal, which was awesome. And I got a little addicted to it. And so when we made it back to Dallas, I missed it. And I also missed my go-to little wine shop in Chicago, Perman Wine Selections. Just quick plug for them. I really enjoy Craig and still get his emails and miss that place. But I started just putting pen to paper in my spare time for fun, not really ever thinking that I would make this a real reality. And finally, it just the conversation that I was having with people close to me turned to, well, if I had a place, I would. And then it just got more and more real. And I was at a point in my time with Pizza Hut corporate, which is where I was working in the marketing department. And it was time to decide what was next there for me. And I really didn't have an answer. And that was the first time in a while, because usually I had my eye on some kind of prize or an exposition or something I was going for. And I was sitting on this business plan and I decided to just really polish it up and see if I could make it a reality. And I just decided to go for it. So I told them I was going to be leaving, and I had to, of course, everybody was going, why do you have another job or what's happening? And so I had to come clean. And then once you come clean, you've got to commit. I mean, you're in, you've got to go. So I was now. Yes, there's expectations. Everybody's waiting to go to this wine bar you're saying you're opening. And so I told people, I admitted what I was doing. That was the first step. And just started shopping for real estate, working in little wine bars and places to make sure that I wasn't way off in what I was projecting in terms of numbers and also ideas for the Dallas market, because I'd only lived in Dallas for about 3 years. And so it was not as familiar to me as other cities. So it kept coming together, and then there's a point of no return. And let me tell you, I reached it on about March 2nd of 2020, a week before everything shut down due to a lovely thing called the pandemic. So, I mean, you've really got to be committed because you never know what curveballs are coming your way. But it's turned out really well. I mean, of course, I would go back and make changes if I could do it all over again. I think anybody could say that about anything. You just can't do everything perfect the first time, but it's moving along. It's thriving. I'd of course like it to be busier, but we can't do that right now, one day. And it's been fun. I think that's also the important thing. As I was working in these other places, I was thinking to myself, can I do this every day? Is this okay? Is this what I want out of my day to day? Because there are going to be days that my staff doesn't show up and I can't go home, or, you know, and how am I going to feel about that? And how do I feel about mopping the bathroom floors at the end of the night? Because sometimes I'm just going to have to. And, really, I wouldn't trade it. I love being there every day. It's so fun to interact with the customers and the people in the neighborhood that Trova's located in. And also, I just adore my staff. They're so fun. They're so passionate. And I have a great relationship with them. So I made the right choice. On days when I'm down, I will remember saying this to all of you, but I feel like it was the right choice. And a lot of that has to do with actually, honing in on a good plan, and then additionally making sure it was something that I really wanted to do and I truly did enjoy.
Yeah. That has to be true of any professional endeavor, right? I mean, if you can't see yourself being happy in it long term, then there's got to be something else out there that you can get into that maybe is the right thing. And our viewers are saying that you're actually living your dream, and they're like super impressed by this, and you're kind of living my dream too. So like, I love to live vicariously through you in this moment. Like, it's definitely working. And I feel so fortunate to live in Dallas so that I can help support your dream. And I mean, talking about women empowering women, I found out about you and about Trova through one of my sorority sisters from college, who was originally from Plano, worked with you at Pizza Hut. And then when you opened Trova, she posted you on her Facebook page, and I said, oh, wait a minute. Okay, well, I can go there. And then that starts the whole thing, and kind of on the, you've made it past the 1 year anniversary of a potential nervous breakdown because of the pandemic and open a business. So bravo to you.
Thanks.
I think that's kind of how we all feel right now.
I know. Yeah.
Someone said the foundation of any entrepreneurial business is the plan. So I'm glad to hear that like the plan was a big part of what you did. And, I've talked to a lot of women in this industry, and it seems like it does take like a good, sometimes 2 to 3 years to really take the plan and hone it in and make sure that you know it front to back, because once you start telling the plan to other people and trying to sell the plan, if you're looking for investment, I mean, you have to be on it, from start to finish. So
and also it's something I reference constantly, and I was telling someone this the other day. Your head is never as clear as it is before you enter this madness. And so you've really thought through things pretty well whenever you're clear thinking, putting pen to paper. And so I use it. It's like my little Bible, my work Bible. It's like, if I'm lost or I'm like, I need to just generate a little more this month. What was I thinking, a year ago? I'll go back and look, and it's a really helpful guide and resource. So I'm glad I have it.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of resources, were there any resources like here in the Dallas area that you were able to call upon in order to kind of move your process forward?
Oh boy. Let's see. I think a big piece of advice to people looking to do something completely, out of the box that takes this much effort, money, and commitment is you can't do it alone. It's you have to know when to admit that you're lost and you need a little bit of help. So I actually found some help through the SBA offices. They set me up with a mentor at one point to kind of just challenge different areas of my business plan. Just people like on my team, like my lawyer is wonderful, David Denny. He's only representing bars and restaurants. So, you know, his reach and connections in the city have been really great. My Waylon Tate, my PR manager, is just, he's, you know, a friend, a life coach, all of the above. I mean, he owns his own business. So I feel like I can go to him. But I really read a lot of books, to be honest, leading up to it. And then also just boots on the ground research. So the second I knew I wanted to be in the shopping center that I was focusing on, I literally would sit at the various restaurants that already exist, at the bars at different times of the day, and count how many people were drinking and what I thought it was and how much that ran, and so about how much they were spending, and so that I could gauge, like, this is this neighborhood, this is what they're spending on lunch, this is what they would be willing to spend, you know, at a place like mine. And then I would hit other similar businesses, see what their business levels were like, and think, okay, if they can get 20 people in here on a Thursday at 4, I can maybe get 10, you know, just what's the worst case scenario? What's real, you know, because these numbers that you're putting into the plan they're fake, they're made up, but you want them to be as realistic as possible, so that you're not caught off guard whenever you open the door and, oh, there's not a line around the block like you imagined in your dreams. You actually have to recruit people in and make sure people know that you exist. So yeah, just a hodgepodge of resources there, but definitely lean on them, and people who've done it before. I mean, I'm new to this industry, so I didn't really know a lot of people who had started restaurants. So that is an aspect I was missing coming into this, which was, it would have made it probably a little easier to talk to someone. I also wish I had been a little braver about approaching them. If anyone ever approached me, I would put time on the calendar as fast as I could to pay it forward and, you know, share what I wished I had when I was going through the process. But yeah, just leaning on those resources is a huge thing.
Absolutely. So other than just the challenge of, you know, financials and trying to figure out how to make your dream come true, and then of course, having not come from the restaurant industry and trying to navigate that, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced when you were trying to, you know, maybe even before you broke ground, you know, essentially, which I know you're in a plaza, but, and what were the challenges that kind of kept coming up as you went through the process?
The SBA loan process is horrible. I commiserate with anyone who has ever gone through it or will go through it in the future. They don't make anything easy. It's endless paperwork. It's endless sending bank statements. It's just a nightmare. So that was a huge hurdle. And then just inexperience, to be honest, it sucks, you know, and we all go through it at some point, and it sucks to be the one that doesn't know everything when you really want to know it all. But just anyone I could get put in touch with who knew someone who did a thing that was even remotely similar to what I was going through, I would talk to them. And I started piecing together the team that ultimately got this place open. So, you know, equipment companies, my contractors were a recommendation, and holy crap, were they good. I mean, they were just so great. The strong group, I would use them 10 times over. They kept me in budget. That never happened. And I think just asking around, that really got me there. But just not knowing anybody was a huge hurdle in and of itself. So all that inexperience comes back to bite you a little bit. So those would probably be the biggest things.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you've overcome them. You know, when we were there, It was busy, socially distanced, appropriate busy, but it was definitely busy. And it's great to see that so many people kind of see you as a place that they can go to get a great glass of wine and, you know, some good bites to eat. You know, we had the 2 sandwiches and they were absolutely delicious.
Oh yeah.
Gonna have to go back and get some grilled cheese. Loved the, you know, the chicken cafe toast, like that was delicious. So I think that you're doing, you know, all the right things. And obviously the questions that you've been asking were the right ones, because it is so hard to ask for help sometimes. Why don't we do it? You know?
I don't know. I don't know.
Why are we afraid to put ourselves out there? You know, like the answers
so
are
embarrassing, but it's not. I mean, everybody needs help. So I should take my own advice if I do this again, and I recommend people do the same. Just ask if you need help. It's worth it.
That's the truth. So you talked a little bit about how sometimes when people walk into Trova, they're looking to talk to a dude. So whether it's your husband or whether it's Cameron, your wine director, or something like that.
They've asked for my dad. He lives in Arkansas. He's never,
like they think it's like a family business and you're just like moonlighting.
Yeah.
I can imagine, you know, so my dad's a lawyer and I thought for a long time I was going to be 4th generation to take over the firm. So I can only imagine if I would have gone through with that dream, how often people would have said, oh, well, no, I want your father. Like, I need to talk to your father. I was like, well, hold on a minute. I'm curious about the demographic of people that are coming into your store overall. So I did a little bit of research. You know, I like to nerd out a little bit when I put together, you know, the talking topics for the show. And I saw that, you know, women account for 4.3 trillion of the 5.9 trillion of consumer spending on wine. That's crazy.
Yeah,
and
it's a lot.
Yeah. Now, do you see some of that kind of reflected? Like, because I know that you not only have the restaurant side and the wine bar side, but you also have the retail side. Are you kind of seeing some of that same trend in terms of who's doing the buying?
On premise, it is very heavily female driven. In terms of retail, that's when the men show up, which has been really interesting. I actually, when doing research for this place ages ago, I sent out a survey to just anyone I knew and told them to pass it to anyone they knew. And one of the questions I asked was, who in your household does the buying of the wine for the household? And over half said the men. Which I thought was really interesting because that is not how it is in my household. I'm married to a bourbon drinker, so he's buying the brown stuff, I'm buying the good stuff. So I thought that was really interesting, and it has totally been reflected in who I see come through and for what purpose. But yes, our customer is heavily female for on-premise consumption, but we like, that's the men come in and buy the bottles to go.
That's so interesting to hear. I mean, but at the same time, you know, it's great to, you know, see that at least in one part, like in the on-premise, like you said, predominantly women. And I wonder if some of it is because they know that it's a female-owned business and they're supporting. And we're going to have a poll about that later to see how many of you that are viewers are doing that today. So I'm also curious in terms of the skill set, you know, if you've given us a little bit of advice here about doing market research, about pulling on those resources, really finding your tribe to help you build your business. And you know, what are, you know, if you wanted to start a wine bar tomorrow or anything, you know, a bottle shop, a cheese shop, which is something that I want to do, you know, what sort of things would you need, you know, in order to start your own business? And then like, how do you keep the ideas flowing? How do you not end up becoming stagnant because you're so logged into the day-to-day?
So I think passion falls in there, and that helps keep the ideas flowing. I mean, I truly love this place. I've always wanted to own something like this, and I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about its success. And so that goes hand in hand with just constantly having ideas. And then I think having some pride is important too. Like, I was not going to tell a bunch of people that I was opening a wine bar and then not do it. I mean, it just was not happening. So you've got to have that, a little bit of stubbornness, a little pride in there where you don't want to let people down, you know? And then just true determination and patience, because this was a long process. I mean, just to give an example, I negotiated my lease for 10 months. You know, that's unheard of. It's nuts. I honestly constantly thought that I would not end up in the space that I'm in. I'm sort of shocked to this day that it all worked out, because it felt so many times like it never would, because it just went on for so long. But I wasn't giving up. And, you know, I had a number in my budget, in my business plan, and that's what I was spending. And so that's what I was going to get. And if it didn't work out in that location, I would have tailored something for something else. I really wanted to do this. And so having that is really important, because you're going to run into hiccups along the way. And it's really easy to just say, this is a good time to give up. I don't have to do this. I thought that so many times. And you know, my parents were like, why are you leaving your nice job to do
your
this?
Nice corporate job with benefits.
Yeah, what's happening? Do you know how many restaurants fail? And you know, so it gets in your head a little bit, and you think, yeah, you know, I don't have to do this. I could just go get a nice paycheck on someone else's dime, you know? So just having that drive to keep pushing when you hit the roadblocks, because there will be many. And then after you open, there are many. I'm still running into them just daily, just trying to keep the place afloat in a pandemic. You know, you just never know what's coming your way. And so it's important to have that, to push through it.
Definitely. Well, you have your own perseverance. And I know in the beginning, they're a little skeptical there, and they wanted to bring out the statistics. I think that's what scares a lot of people off from that entrepreneurial spirit to begin with. But who have been some of your biggest cheerleaders over the last couple of years?
Oh gosh. So I have just a really close group of friends who've been awesome, super supportive, constantly checking on me, getting my mind off it when I needed to. I mean, my husband, Chad, it would not happen without him. I mean, he gets very offended when people think that he's, you know, responsible for the business, but at the same time, he in a way is. I wouldn't be able to do this without his support. I mean, he's a thought partner. He's a therapist. I feel like sometimes whenever I need one at the end of the day, you know, and you know, he's just a true marketer for the business. He tells everyone about it. And it's awesome. So definitely wouldn't be able to do it without him. And my parents are supportive too. I mean, they reference the statistics a lot, but obviously want me to be happy. It also didn't help that when I opened, it was just raging pandemic, and they couldn't come because they didn't feel safe. And so they didn't make it to visit until Thanksgiving. And I think the week they came, it was Thanksgiving week, which is a strange week for restaurants because people have family coming in town and they're cooking a lot at home and whatnot. And so our Tuesday was just crazy. I couldn't get out of there because we were shorthanded. And then Wednesday, it was just crickets, and that's the day they came. And my dad said, "Is it this empty all the time?" And so I had to explain, you know, some days are quieter than others, but I promise people come here.
That's just always no day, right? I mean, well, I'm sure you were probably busy that Friday as well if you were open. I think Friday biggest drinking days, you know, of the year. I think that's definitely statistic as well. But well, we're so glad that, you know, that you're here, that you know, have made your dreams come true. And you know, I'm hoping that, you know, down the line, like someone is going to see your story and be inspired and say, I can do it too. So that's, I
hope so. It might be you.
It might be. I'm ready to I might come and intern at Trova, be like, can I just stand behind the bar and pretend that I'm still in this life that I sometimes miss, even though I really like being in bed by 10 p.m. You know, I'm old now.
Yeah, it happens.
Amazing. Well, we want to put out a poll here. We talked a little bit about supporting female-owned businesses, and we want to see how many of you are kind of practicing what we like to preach. So let me see if I can launch this from here. Oh, I don't see it. Oh, wait, it might be here. Nope. Not there either. We might have to skip the polls, but you can put it in the chat. If you like to support female-owned businesses, let us know. If it's not something that you knew was a trend, let us know that too, because we definitely want to see more people kind of, leaning in and empowering women every day. And I will try to figure out how to launch a poll via Zoom on an iPad versus my computer, which decided to restart this afternoon before we got on this call, because of course, technology is not always our friend. But we're to the point of the webinar where we get to taste more wine. The best thing in the world. So we started with the DVX 2012. One of my favorite things about doing vintage sparkling is that it kind of gets, it allows you to time travel back in time. And so, Andrea, you were talking about how the 2012 vintage in California was so epic. And I was actually selling wine back in the day. I think this was like 2015. And we were selling the 2012 vintages of like really amazing Cabernets, from Hillside Fruit. And even 2012 in Oregon was an epic year. And so it's so cool to kind of like reverse and get to experience it all over again, which is very cool. So we're going to now taste the Perrier-Jouet Belle Epoque. I have the 2011 vintage because that's what I had on hand. But I think Cassie, you and Andrea have the 2012. So we'll actually have some tasting notes to compare, which is super fun. But it's kind of neat. So the DVX was 50-50 Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. We're almost to that with the Belle Epoque as well. So this is 50% Chardonnay, 45% Pinot Noir, and 5% Meunier, which is the third grape that is typically used in champagne blends. But Perrier-Jouet is now, it's a house that has a lot of history that was very much marked by one of its co-founders, and that was Rose Adelaide Jouet, hence the Jouet in the name. Definitely into that female empowerment because she put her name on the bottle. Woot woot to that. But she was integral in more of ways than just that. She kept the records, she kept the correspondence, and even when her husband Nicolas was traveling, she also ran the tastings for the blending, which is something that they're doing right now in Champagne. So in the fall, we have harvest, then we go through fermentation. Now we're to the point where we taste all of those individual lots that are in all of those tanks so that we can make the final blends. So that was something that she did. And she had a knack for hospitality, which I think many women do. If you read through a lot of historical fiction, like I do, a lot of times it's the women who are who are really the members of the diplomatic correspondence and party, because we're the ones that make things happen because we make others feel comfortable. So I think that was definitely something that she did. But now, as of October 2020, our cellar master is also a woman. I talked about her a little bit earlier. Her name is Séverine Ferson, and she is an absolute delight. And I want to just put her in my pocket and carry her with me everywhere I go. I know, Cassie, you got to meet her when you were there last October in 2019. Oh my God, where are we today?
I love that woman. She was so wonderful. Honestly, I was kind of the same way. I was like, I just want to take you home with me. Like, you're so great.
She's so
I got
sweet.
a picture with her, but also her knowledge was really incredible. And to be able to see, there's this aspect of like generational knowledge that gets passed on, but there's also these people that are, paving the way for women in wine, especially. And Séverine is definitely one of them.
I agree. She told me a really interesting anecdote recently because I was asking her about International Women's Day, if it's something that they kind of talk about in France, and what her vision was about like what choose to challenge means. And even though, she's been practicing her English, she's doing great, obviously it's all about confidence at that point. But she was telling me during the course of her journey, when she was wanting to become a winemaker, she does not come from a winemaking family. So that means that she didn't have that automatic from as if someone else, if her family owned, a champagne house or even owned vineyards. And when she was studying enology, they were at the point where there were quotas to have more women in the program. And it's because they didn't have enough women that were going into the field. And so it's incredibly interesting to see that, because now we have a lot more women in positions of power, especially in Champagne, whether it's cellar master, owner, president, CEO, and some really heavy hitting brands as well. And so I think now I researched it a little bit. I was digging in with the CIVC, which is the Committee of Champagne. And I think now we're at about 60% of people in the enology program are women. So that's incredible to see that shift from when she was there and they had to essentially coax women to do it, to now where we represent more than half of the people who are studying. So that is a huge push forward, and I'm pretty pumped about it. But, you know, just the fact that she can put her, you know, special touch on these wines now is absolutely incredible, especially working with Hervé Deschamps, who was our cellar master, you know, since 1993 prior to that. And I wish that we had the 2013 vintage that we could taste together, because that was the first vintage that she worked on the dosage for. So it would be really neat to see how he started it and then how she finished it. So look out for that when 2013 comes into the market. It'll probably be within the next 6 months to year or so, depending. But the 2011 and 2012, beautiful wines. If you know the story of Belle Epoque, you know that it is rooted in mystery and in art and in, you know, that idea again of hospitality. You know, you go to the Maison and you are surrounded by nature. And that was something that Rose Adelaide Jouet and her husband, Nicolas, were really, really into. They were both botanists. They loved, you know, that idea of like being immersed in nature. And so at one point they had a huge greenhouse that was full of more than 300 different types of orchid. There's still a bunch of really gorgeous foliage on the property today. We were there in the fall, so the colors were absolutely fantastic. But if you go in the spring, that's when everything really kind of explodes. And so this gorgeous flower that you see on my glass, and then also that is echoed on the bottle. So that is the Japanese anemone. And that is a flower that still grows on property today. And so that was something Emile Gallet, who was an artist during the Art Nouveau period, was invited to the house to be inspired, to hang out, you know, take a break from the hustle and bustle of Paris during that time. Because if you think about it, it was like very high energy, like the bourgeoisie, you know, Toulouse-Lautrec, the Moulin Rouge, all of these things were going on. And so he, you know, escapes to Epernay, which Lord knows how long it took to get there then, because now it's about 45 minutes by train or 2 hours by car. So I can't even imagine in 1902, it might have taken a week. But he gets there and he is so enamored with the style of the wines, with how peaceful everything is on the property. And he found this flower, painted it on 4 magnums, and then those bottles were lost in the cellar until 1964. And so that's why the first vintage of Belle Epoque was not until then, and it was released in 1969. So kind of a cool fun fact, but very much based in Chardonnay. So it'll be very cool to see how this wine differs from the DVX, not just based on, you know, of course, location, because of course the winemaking style is very similar. Delicious. I think you can definitely tell that the DVX, this is where you can really see the barrel influence, I think, in the DVX, because we use only stainless steel for the Belle Epoque. And I think that the Chardonnay comes out a lot more here, kind of in terms of those mineral qualities and those really nice kind of citrusy floral qualities that you get, versus the DVX, which I think has a lot more power, probably from that little bit of like oxidative, you know, kind of that you get from that barrel aging. What do you guys think?
Guy Devaux used to say that the Pinot Noir was the knight and the Chardonnay was the princess in the blend. And you can really see that between these two wines. You know, DVX does have a little bit more power, although elegant. And I feel like there's so many beautiful, like orange blossom notes on the nose of the Belle Epoque. It's beautiful.
Thank you. And this isn't something that you get to taste all the time, right, Andrea? So this is a treat for you. Just like this, the DVX was a treat for me. It's people helping people.
I'll do virtual tasting with you anytime, Elise.
Okay. Sounds like a plan to me.
There's like a brightness in the Belle Epoque that it's just this lift. I don't want to say that there's a richness in one or a ripeness in one, but like there is this underlying acidity that makes your mouth water. And I'm at this point where I'm kind of hungry. So I'm like, oh, this would be so good with oysters, or this would be so good with any sort of shellfish right now. It would be so like, yeah, there's this mouth-watering acidity that just kind of like drives the flavor. But yeah, very well balanced and delicious.
I love that. When I was, so I do recipe pairings for the cuvées on the Perrier-Jouet website. And I had asked Severine specifically because we wanted to release one in March for International Women's Day. And I wanted her take on it. And it was about the Belle Epoque. And she said, you should do chicken breasts with roasted hazelnuts and acorn squash. And I said, that sounds amazing, but very fall driven. So I will wait for that. So I ended up making my own recipe, which we will hopefully have on the website soon. I just have to go through and actually write out the full recipe. My sister took all the pictures, so very appreciative for her for that, you know, women supporting women. And so I did a roast chicken. You can get chicken breasts here in the United States, which is a particular type of chicken. So we talk about, you know, protected wine sites, AVAs, AOPs, etc. So Champagne is a protected site. Chicken breast is also protected. You know, it's the one that it's beautifully white, and then it has like the very red comb, and then it has blue feet because of the minerals in the soil where it lives. And so it makes apparently it's like super tender and very rich. So I slow roasted a chicken. I made sourdough popovers with a little bit of Gruyere and herbs de Provence. And then I also made, oh gosh, what was the third thing? I'll have to look, but it was so good.
That sounds amazing. I'm going to need you to come here and make those. Yes. Like the popovers sound to die for.
That was kind of my pandemic thing. A lot of people were doing sourdough and I wasn't doing it. But then a girlfriend of mine and her husband had a starter and they gave me some, and then it was just all over. And, you know, the popovers are one of the easiest things to make ever. I had no idea that it was that simple. And now I just mess with the ingredients all the time. I'm like, okay, well, this one's going to have cheese. This one I can make sweet. This one's going to be this. And it's just, they take 8 minutes. Like, you know, like it's so quick. So I will come to Chicago and I will cook for you, or you will come here and visit me and I will cook for you here. Either. It's a win-win. Definitely. Wonderful. Well, this wine, oh God, it's just so good all the time. But I mean, obviously I've talked about my experiences at Perrier-Jouet, and I think that this is a great way actually to transition to your experience, Cassie, and, you know, the travels that you've had, what it's like being a woman on the floor of a restaurant. And, you know, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, you know, some of the experiences you've had, the travels that you've taken. I mean, I just want to know everything. Yeah. And I actually even have a bottle of Topo Chico.
My favorite sparkling water. Like I said, if I wasn't in wine, I'd be a Topo Chico ambassador. But I saw Kim's comment asking what's my profession. So I'm a sommelier. I live in Chicago. I grew up in a food and wine loving family. My dad is one of 9 kids. And so my extended family is huge, and every one of them collects wine. Every one of them loves food. So it's funny because none of them were ever in hospitality. And I, of course, you know, tried to go to college and do these things that I felt like I was supposed to do. I was a biomedical engineering student at UC Davis, funnily enough. And UC Davis, of all the places to go to college, I ended up taking the viticulture enology class as an elective, which was a huge mistake because you have to take that class to even get it. If that's your major, you have to like take that class. So the curve was awful. And that was my elective, and it was the most miserable class I ever took. Fast forward a couple of years, like I was basically in restaurants that whole time. And I just loved talking to people, and I loved the aspect of hospitality, taking care of people, giving people these experiences that you could, you know, that they've never had before. And to be able to kind of connect that with my family who love wine, it kind of made sense. It was like, okay, you don't want to have a career, you don't want to have the like traditional career, like in this aspect of like, I don't know, people don't say I want to grow up to be a sommelier. But to be able to say, I want to stay in hospitality, how do I make that happen? And I think that wine was the most natural way because I had grown up alongside it. So I'm really lucky because I had family and friends that were very supportive, and I was in a wonderful market that supported that as well, to be able to, you know, to have mentors and to have people that wanted to see everybody succeed within Chicago. So yeah, I'm really lucky. I was the former wine director for Boca Restaurant Group. So Stephanie Izard, so the goat group, Girl and the Goat, Little Goat, Duck, Duck, Goat, Cabra. And it was so fun to be able to kind of curate this eclectic list of wine because the food is so eclectic. So to be able to give people these experiences that, like, first of all, they're jumping outside of the box as far as the food that they're going to eat. And then also they're trusting you with what they're going to drink. So there is this very like custom experience, and to be able to kind of trust somebody to give that to you in a restaurant is very hard.
That's very true. And so one of the things that we were talking about earlier before you were able to jump in was the theme of International Women's Day this year. And I think that that's very related to what you were talking about, because it's choose to challenge. And so what are some of the ways that, you know, what does that mean to you? And, you know, kind of how has that shaped your career at all? Like, as you have gone through, you know, kind of your professional progression?
I worked in restaurants before where it was like, you're qualified, but nobody's going to respect you because you're a woman, or you're qualified and nobody's going to respect you because you're too young, or whatever. I've had these things said to me, which is like, you know, if you're somebody that works in HR, you're like, cringe, because that's literally illegal. But there have been times where there is this kind of stigma of who, like, I got my certified when I was 21 years old. So I knew more about wine than most people do, and I was barely even legally allowed to drink. And so there is this idea that, like, who are you to tell me? And I was like, never about that. It was always about like making it more approachable, because that was the main thing with my group was you want to train the staff, you want to train all these people, and you want to have these experience with guests to give them that like aha moment that says, oh, I learned something new about wine and I'm like so excited to share it with my friends and family. Like, those are the experiences that like convince people to drink wine for the rest of their lives. So I think that was for me like that like really fulfilling moment. There have been times where people are kind of very skeptical about what you have to say, or they ask to see the wine director because they want to know what he has to say. For sure. And I also, like, I've worked in a restaurant too where like we're managers also, so we're seating guests and we're running food and we're doing all these things, and then they say, I want to speak to the somm, and you come to the table and they were not expecting to see you because you showed them to their table and you brought some of their food to their table. And it's like, no, we are team players. We try to do a little bit of everything, but also I can navigate. Like, people say, I want to talk about the wine list. I'm like, I wrote the wine list. So there is this kind of disconnect sometimes of what people expect. And also what, you know, like there is this idea of who has the most knowledge and who's going to give me this experience. And sometimes it's not what they're expecting.
That's true. So it seems like there have been some very teachable moments, like during the course of your experience, you know, as a wine director. And, you know, how have you kind of taken some of those moments that have happened to you and kind of paid it forward to others, like with it, either in your training or with other colleagues, you know, in other restaurants that maybe, you know, because you said that it's a very tight-knit collective in Chicago.
I think, like, as far as teachable moments, I think that there is, when it comes to sommeliers especially, I've been interviewing at a lot of places, and there is this air of arrogance of people that are wine stewards or sommeliers or just wine experts. And I think that turns the average consumer off to wine. And I think that for me, it's really about the complete opposite of that. And for training staff, it's the complete opposite of that. Is wine is for everybody. You don't have to spend $100 to have a mediocre bottle of wine. You can spend $50 to have an incredible bottle of wine. And especially when it comes to the craft cocktail movement, the craft beer movement, all these things that are happening is I've seen my generation that will come in and say, I don't want to spend money on a bottle of wine. And then they proceed to have 4 cocktails that are $15, which like you could have had an incredible bottle of wine for the same price. And it really is about like kind of changing that, like just shifting the gear of how people view wine. And the last thing you want to do is be snobby about it. You want it to be approachable. You want people to be excited about it. And I think that that has been the main thing that I try to pass on to staff is do not ever make somebody feel dumb about wine. Like just give them the information that they want to have and like try and get them excited about it, because if you give them this small piece of information, they're going to be so excited and they're going to tell their friends about it. And then they're going to bring their friends into dinner. So I think for me, it was more about just making it more approachable and being humble also.
Yeah, I think that, that's really what it is. And, you know, I think that's like you were saying, so many times the wine industry has been very closed off. It's been very elitist. And so, you know, and especially as a woman, I feel like we've had to prove ourselves even more so than a lot of our male counterparts, like whether you're going through the court, you know, whether it's something where you just like moved your way up, you know, based on tenure and like working your butt off, like at the job. And I'm so glad to see that, you know, those windows are opening, you know, like this, we're finding ways to make wine more approachable, and we're taking share of the conversation to make sure that it continues that way, rather than kind of going back into that wine is not for everyone. Because like you said, it really is. There is a wine for every person. And I think that that's what I loved working in retail and working in a restaurant was finding those moments for people where it's like, oh, you've never had Barbera before, or you've never tried, you know, a dry Riesling. Let me blow your mind. You know, those are really fun moments. And so you know, women are making moves, you know, in the wine industry, and you've now been tagged as a tastemaker, which is a really fun title, with Mariano's, which is a huge kind of institution up there in Chicago. And so you and your fellow tastemakers were able to put together a whole series on, you know, kind of in the theme of International Women's Day throughout the month of March. So how did you three come together? How were you chosen? And then how did you pitch this idea to make it a reality?
Yeah, so I'm actually really lucky because I didn't have to do any of the pitching. It was more of the team from Mariano's. But Stephanie Iser, who is my former boss, she's just a wonderful, like, Top Chef, Iron Chef. Like, she's also, they choose chefs as tastemakers. So they give you amazing recipe ideas, and they're trying to find ways to just get you to come into their shops and buy their products and find good ways to put them all together. And then on the other end of like what I do is to find beverages that go good with it. So I think the first event that I ever did was for New Year's, and it was, what do you drink on New Year's and why? And of course, everybody thinks of champagne, but it's like, okay, we're in a pandemic, first of all. And then second of all, like, you're not at a party. So what are you doing at home to celebrate New Year's? And like, so I think that there are ways that they have basically tapped us as like tastemakers. And essentially what it is basically people that are associated with restaurants that they trust. So the other tastemaker is Belinda Chang, just an institutional name, a wonderful human, and I adore her. But other incredible sommeliers and other incredible chefs that have something to say. And none of us are ever going to put our name behind something that we wouldn't actually eat or drink ourselves. So I think that's the idea, is you want to associate recipes. We do like a lot of recipe building. We do a lot of just kind of cutting edge like trainings and seminars and stuff. So earlier this evening, the reason why I was late, I was talking to this wonderful human about hard kombucha, which I knew nothing about. And I'm like basically just moderating a conversation though. And it's like, okay, well, there are parallels between wine and beer and kombucha and all these different things and the delicious product, but how do you, like, nobody's ever heard of it. So how do you bring that to the forefront? So I mean, it's a really fun opportunity, and I'm really lucky because, I mean, Mariano's is like Kroger International. They're in like 50 states. So it may not be called Mariano's in other states, but there is something very similar that's owned by the same company. And they're in the process of doing it for all 50 states. So to be able to offer that to many different markets and to be able to talk about an incredible champagne, to be able to talk about any sort of new product is great, but also we wouldn't be talking about those products if they weren't amazing.
Yeah, that integrity is certainly important, right? We don't want to try to stand behind something just for an opportunity. And I'm hoping that, you know, women everywhere are cognizant of that. Is like, you know, the brands that you talk about today will be reflected on, you know, your reputation in the future. So don't buy in unless you are all in. And that's for sure. I've prided myself on that, you know, like, because there have been opportunities for jobs for other companies and things like that. And, you know, if I don't drink the wines, I can't sell the wines, you know, at least not with sincerity. You know, at the end of the day, we all have quotas that we have to meet for sales goals and, you know, things of that nature. And like we were talking about, there is a wine for every person. But if I don't, you know, if it hurts me on the inside to like even, you know, like present it to somebody, then that's definitely not a wine that I can get behind. So I feel very lucky representing Perrier-Jouet and GH Mumm, because it makes my world a lot easier.
Tough life for you, Elise.
It makes the cold calls a lot easier. I mean, that's got to be one of the biggest, you know, stresses of my job, you know, like prior to COVID. So go to a market. I don't know the wine directors in that market because I've never lived there, and just like knocking on the door, like trying to get appointments. And it's like, well, can I taste with you? This is what I have. And like, usually 75% of the time we get a yes. Yeah. So, like, and then, you know, my sparkling personality takes it from there. Like, you know, but it's very cool to get to see, you know, where our professional lives take us and with those opportunities that come forward. So I'm so glad that you've had this opportunity with Mariano's, because it's very cool. And I did put the link to their Eventbrite page in the chat if you wanted, if all of our viewers, if you want to check that out, so you can see some of the events that they have coming up throughout the rest of the month, because they are going to be epic. Now, you talked a little bit about some of your mentors and how important that was. So Stephanie, for example, you know, she was a household name for us. Like, I remember her season of Top Chef and like being so enamored with what she was doing. And, you know, when I actually got to go to Chicago, you know, and actually getting to see the restaurants and, you know, meeting you and sitting down at the table and like actually getting to taste together and see your list. That was really, really neat, just to see it being, you know, very female driven from the top down, and not just, you know, to have a figurehead and then not, you know, practice what you preach. So I'm curious, you know, other women, you know, who kind of have been those mentors in your career, like from very young. I mean, you passed the Somm exam at 21, like that's incredible. So like, who's kind of guided you down the path?
So I moved to Chicago when I was, I think, 19 or 20, and I was lucky enough to work in enough restaurants where it was kind of like, as long as you're not touching alcohol, you can be in the restaurant and you can learn things, because they're kind of strict. Because I've also worked in places where you only had to be 18 to serve other people alcohol. But I worked for Alpina Singh, actually, who was the youngest female master sommelier. She was 26 when she passed her MS, and she opened a restaurant on Michigan Avenue called Seven Lions. It was right across from the Art Institute. And so this place was just incredibly hectic from open to close. And I was this kid, and I had dropped out of college because I hated it. And I was working in restaurants just to like determine what I wanted to do. And Alpina used to host these optional wine classes on Wednesdays, where it would be like either blind tasting or just like, you know, educational, in the sense of like, she'd pull a couple bottles. And her stories and everything about her, she was always so engaging and just wonderful, that I was like, okay, maybe I don't want to be a server for the rest of my life. How can I turn this into a career? This is the answer. And I grew up with it. It just made sense. And so to be able to kind of have somebody like her, who even now as a like when I was working at Girl and Go, like we remained in touch, and to be able to have her as like a sounding board. And it was funny because we just like kind of bonded over multiple things going on, Court of Master Sommeliers and all these different things. And she's just been this wonderful human who's basically just taught me that like, you have to be your authentic self, and you also can spread your love of wine to other people. And if like one person like her can do that for me, and also like I know 3 or 4 people who she has drastically impacted to go into wine, and if I can do that exact same thing, it is this like butterfly effect to be able to pass it along to the next generation of people. And I see these people that are my age, and I see myself in some of the people that I get to teach about wine. And I'm like, I hope that you get this like light bulb of, I love wine and I want to make this my career and I want to do this for the rest of my life. Like that's the idea. So
well, we definitely support you in that. And,
Thank
you know,
you.
I'm so glad that you had a mentor like Alpana, because she really is a force to be reckoned with. And I wish that people like her had more visibility, especially when it comes to the court and how they've, I guess, kind of marketed themselves over the years, because they, you know, women like her weren't really the focus. Like when that Somm movie came out, it was pretty dominated by men, but there are so many incredible women that are a part of that organization that are now leading that organization, you know, especially over this last year.
And especially over the past year, to be able to see like who are the leadership and how are they pushing for diversity, but like it's deserved. There's these people that have been kind of repressed. A lot of advanced and or master's candidates who are fighting for attention. It's just like, why does it have anything to do with sex? These people are incredibly talented. And to see people like the new board, Emily Wines, Mia Vanderwater, these incredible sommeliers who literally mentor like 10, 20, 30 people that are going to be the next set of master sommeliers. So to be able to see these incredible women is really incredible. And they're all just so inspiring as well.
That's kind of the exponential growth that we want to see, right? You know, it starts with one and then it just goes from there. So those 30, add 30 on top of all of those 30, and then all of a sudden we rule the world. So, I mean, that would be ideal, I think, at the end of the day. And I know that sometimes those positive mentorship opportunities are not always possible for people. And I'm sure throughout the course of all of our careers, we've had struggles with maybe other women you know, in leadership positions that we haven't jived with. So if all of you are willing to share maybe something like that and how maybe you were able to overcome it, I think that would be a really great learning opportunity for many of our viewers who might be facing the same thing, if you're comfortable.
I mean, I'll go first. I think that there have been times where I've worked with women, like within my company even, where it feels like you're competing for the like sole female position. And it should never feel that way. It should just be like, you should be doing the best job possible for what your position is. But I think that there's just times where you feel like there's this like kind of like tension or like stagnancy or whatever. And to me, my favorite thing about the women that I work with is we're all hyper communicative. So it's like we all recognize what's going on. And it's like, okay, this should not happen. Like, how can we all be the best people that we can be without feeling like bitter that somebody else is, you know, getting recognition for something? How can we empower those people to do a good job, because they're not doing the same job as us? And to be able to find ways to lift other people up without, you know, feeling bad about ourselves, or also like, how do we succeed without bringing other people down? There's like a really great way to be able to empower other people without, I don't even know what the right word to say is, like without like affecting the people around us, if that makes sense.
Definitely. It's so Stu was just saying that it's all about your mindset. The pie is not finite. It grows so that there's more to go around. And I think that that's definitely exactly what you're saying. And it's the mindset that we all need to have. Because I've had my
I think
own
that there's always been this aspect that I think like exactly what that said is that there's this pie is that like us as women think that we're only entitled to like 25% of it. And it's like, that's not the case, is that there's so much more, and that we're not fighting for this specific piece, is that like, there's so much more to be said and offered. And it's so hard to be able to put that, I don't know, when it comes to like working alongside people, to say like us together is so much better than us fighting against each other. Like we could both grow with the company, or grow sales, or whatever the numbers are, to be able to reflect that and both be successful is very empowering.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a misconception that if someone else is succeeding, that means you are not, which is not true. I mean, we can all grow together. Personally, if I think of an example of a female struggle at a workplace it had to do with a superior of mine. And there's something to be said for growing your people. And it means something else. Maybe not necessarily if someone underneath you delivers a fantastic product, it means you led them there in some way, and you should give yourself credit for that and not feel threatened by it. And I think just for some reason, if you're close in age and there is a little bit of there could be a little bit of a power struggle that doesn't necessarily even need to be there, because there's room for everyone somewhere, and you'll get there. But we've got to support each other in order to make that happen. And it doesn't help anyone whenever that's not the case.
Yeah, I would agree. I think as leaders, it's our job to grow others past where we are. You know, it's really our job, and it's our job to identify who's the really talented person in the room, and to give them the task, as Michelle said, just to flourish and to really create a beautiful product, because it does shine on you as a leader that you've been able to identify that person. So I echo everything that, both of these lovely ladies said, and it's been a privilege to grow other women past where I am, or on a different path. For me, I don't think, I think I can honestly say that there have been very few moments where my competition, that fierce competition, has happened between another woman and me. I've been privileged to work with some really amazing women in this career in particular. In education, I had an older teacher tell me that it was the worst profession to get into when I was student teaching. I lasted for 10 years, so it's okay. But yeah, I agree. Like, it's our job as leaders to really grow the people behind us up to our point and then beyond.
I remember reading this article, and I don't even want to reference who wrote it or what it was, but I remember it was this article about these women in the older generation of wine that were giving advice to the younger generation. I remember reading this thing that said like, oh yeah, if you want people to take you seriously, you should dress more feminine, or vice versa, dress more masculine. I remember like actively cringing at this article, because it was the most horribly sexist thing. It was like, oh, if you want somebody to take you seriously, you have to dress a specific way. And I just remember feeling like, why is somebody even talking about this right now, especially as a woman, to be able to give advice to other people. And I think that when we talk about like mentoring other people, is you want them to succeed, and you want them to outgrow where they are. You hopefully will give them this space to grow, and you'll support them. And like, it's the biggest compliment to say, oh yeah, I worked under this person, and now here's where I am, and I'm much bigger and further along because of it. And those skills were given to me for a reason. But like, there have been so many times where there's this like internalized misogyny as the older generation of women that are trying to say, oh, well, maybe you should act a specific way or dress a specific way or talk a specific way. And when you are in tastings or you're in a larger group or you're in a wine dinner or whatever, you have to act a way that people expect to be in your place, if that makes sense.
I also feel like we're kind of pigeonholed into a couple different roles traditionally, historically, you know, that's the motherhood role or the, you know, how do I say it? You know, like the controlling role, right? Like it's always about control. And so, and we're non-confrontational. If we're confrontational, we're on the other extreme. And so I really feel like as women, it's been really hard for us to give fair feedback, right? That feedback to each other that is, you did this really, really well. And these are where your skills lie. What you could really improve on is this, but I really value you as a person. And it's been very hard for our gender to learn how to provide that really balanced level of feedback and not to feel like we're walking into a war zone when we do provide that feedback. Because I, even now as a seasoned manager, I would call myself fairly seasoned at this point. It's hard for me to work up the courage to walk into a meeting where I know I need to give some intense feedback or, you know, negative feedback, even though I really value and love the person that's sitting across from me, you know, and I think that's our traditional roles that we've kind of been pigeonholed into historically, societally.
I think it's true. And what I would say is that, you know, if you're a woman who is looking to kind of take your profession to the next level, whether it's in wine or not, I would say if there are people that you are reporting to that are giving you a hard time, and, you know, what I used to say is, you know, you have to succeed in spite of someone rather than succeeding because of that person. It doesn't last forever. You know, there's always going to be another opportunity for you, or that person is somehow going to either move on, move up, move out, whatever it is. It's, you know, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And a lot of the skills that you can learn too is not only how to give feedback, but how to take feedback, how to internalize it, and how to move forward with it. And don't be afraid to call on your mentors, call on your HR partners, call on all of these people who are supposed to be advocates for you within your professional career if you have those, if you have access to those. And also, you know, if you ever want to be a manager, one of the books that one of my mentors had me read, it was called Drive. And I think that Drive is an excellent book to kind of get to know a little bit more about people, how to figure out what moves them, what are they motivated by, and it makes a lot of those conversations a lot easier, whether it's someone that you are managing or whether it's someone who manages you. So definitely take a look out for that.
Crucial conversation. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Crucial conversations is another really good one too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. That's a good one.
I like what got you here won't get you there. It's a little bit more pointed for yourself in terms of being a leader, but it covers a lot of common mistakes in leadership and those common stereotypes of poor leaders and what they might be doing to exhibit that and how you can make sure you're not. I think it's helpful. I always recommend it to people.
Thank you. These are great. Well, I'm curious for all of you now. So Cassie, something that you and I had kind of talked about addressing here today is how do you figure out a 5-year plan? You know, like people talk about this. It's not something I've ever been able to do. You know, my husband laughs at me. He's like, okay, well, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I'm like, I don't know. You make me move every 2 or 3 years. So I'm not sure. So I'm curious, like, how have all of you developed kind of like your professional plan, and how do you keep updating it as, you know, as the years go by and like you find yourself within either a new profession or maybe not where you expected to be?
This is so crazy because we like very briefly touched on this the other day, but 5 years ago I was serving tables, and I did have my certified sommelier. I loved wine, but it was always the aspect of I'm going to serve and there will be no need for a sommelier to touch the table because I will be the sommelier, but I will also be serving you. So that was this aspect that eventually the dynamic changed. And I remember maybe 3 or 4 years ago, when I first took my first wine directing position, my GM at the time was a woman, and she asked me, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? And I said, 5 years from now, I'd love to be a corporate wine director over multiple properties. And literally a year later, I was given this opportunity to be a corporate wine director. And so it was so funny, because it was like, well, that was in my 5-year plan, and now that's in my like immediate future. And and so I did that for 4 years, and I got let go with the pandemic and all these things that happened. And it was so funny, because I was like, okay, well, what's next? And my 5-year plan now was like, okay, well, now we just find something similar to that. And I'm so lucky, because I'm interviewing for jobs that were in my like 10-year plan. So like, for me, I think it's like, honestly, shoot for the stars, because seriously, there's nothing that I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, I just don't feel like I have the skills to do this. But here's the thing, it's like, if you have the will to want to learn those things, and if you have the capacity to learn those things, and if you have the personality to be able to like find a way to make it happen, it doesn't matter what is like realistic. So it's so funny, because my 5-year plan is now my like 15-year plan, and I'm interviewing for the like dream job that I wanted to have when I like 10 years from now. So I'm literally like, okay, this is crazy, because what is even a 5-year plan? What is even a 10-year plan? I think that if there is a way to make it happen, I don't think that you should feel like you have to be like realistic about anything, because I think that companies value they value your time, they value your personality, they value how much passion you're going to put into something. And as long as you can reflect that, then, and especially after a pandemic, people and companies especially are realizing that you can teach the things that you want people to learn, but like, you cannot teach hard work, you cannot teach character, you cannot teach these certain things that like you just have to inherently have to be ambitious and to have one of the things that you plan for the future. So I guess that's the way I see things. I would have never guessed this, but I'm very happy to be here right now. So yeah, that's my 5-year plan.
Yeah. Andrea, what about you? I'm very curious, now that you've been with Mumm Napa for a year and a half, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
It's funny that we're talking about this, because I was literally 10 years ago next door at Con Creek. We'd come to Mumm Napa, and Mumm Napa was the first California sparkling wine that I drank as a new mom back in California, or back in Canada when I lived there. But we would come over here, and it would be like crazy busy. We would have seen like 3 people a day, right, in the day. And I'd come over here, and they'd be so busy. They'd be selling bottles. I'd see a guy loading cases up into somebody's car in front of the, I was like, oh, I want to be part of that. And here I am 10 years later, I'm running that, right? And they're looking to me to like build the program from where it was to become even bigger. And it's such a privilege, and it's such an honor. And I echo exactly what Cassie said, that, and I read an article just yesterday where it talks about men and women and the difference between how we assess ourselves and our skill sets. Men will apply for a job if they can at least tick 4 or 6 of the boxes. Women will not apply for a job unless they can check, big fat check, all 10, right? And I took this job with fear and trembling, because I had determined, I took a step back. I was an event coordinator, 250 people event. I hosted Steve Forbes for his 70th birthday at one point, but it was a step back from management and leadership. And so finally my husband was like, you need to do what's best for you. And what is it? What is it you want? And I said, well, I want to manage a winery that has 100-point wine. And bam, 2 weeks later, I was offered a job at a winery managing the tasting room that had, like 200-point wines, and scored another 100-point wine, the following year. So, you have to just go for it and know that you have the gumption, the determination, and you are intelligent enough to figure out the resources for yourself. when you're in the situation. You can do it. I mean, we can be moms and full-time workers and daughters and, you know, cousins and sisters and all of these roles we can perform in our lives, but we don't think we can go for a job where we know we have at least 5 of the characteristics. It's just mind-boggling to me. And I look back on my past self and go, wake up, like, wake up, you can do this, you can do this. And, you know, I've tried to instill this in the women that work for me, and the men too, but instill this in the women that work for me. And I've seen a couple just like blossom, which is really, it's really a privilege and an honor to see. But 10 years, 5 years from now, I want to be a director of, you know, multiple properties. I want to oversee, you know, that kind of thing. I would love to stay with Pernod Ricard. Like, this is honestly the best company I've ever worked for. They live out the values that they profess, which you don't find in this industry, I don't think. And they really do care about women. I mean, I just joined the women's employee resource group last week, I think it was. And, you know, some of the benefits they have for nursing mothers or mothers in general is just, it's earth-shattering to me. It's something you'd only see in the tech world, but in the spirits and wine industry, we have that here in our company. And I love it. I love it. I love this company. I love Mumm Napa. I love what it stands for. I love Napa in general. So I want to stay here in Napa, but I'm really excited to see where life takes me. I know that wasn't a really direct answer to your question, Elise, but I think in 5 years, what I want to see myself doing is a director, and then shortly after VP of, you know, DTC at some point in some winery. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. Can you be my mentor? Like, can I come work for you? Like, your passion is infectious.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. I think this industry needs us, right? That needs the empathy. It needs the compassion. It needs the, you know, I love what you said, Cassie, about being accessible, approachable about wine, because wine is so unapproachable in so many aspects. And it's really up to us to make it a living, breathing lifestyle, you know, integration, moments of conviviality, you know, that we can set up for people in their homes, right? We create those moments here and then send them home with those things. And that's what all of us do, I think, on this call.
I definitely agree. Well, Michelle, what about you? Are there going to be franchises of Trovas in your future?
I would like other concepts completely different from Trova. Still trying to decide what that looks like. I feel like my advice on the whole 5-year plan is always have one, but update it frequently, because things change and move consistently, and you just never know what's going to come up. I mean, obviously, sometimes you reach those milestones way before you even plan to, or something else comes your way that you didn't even know about. But also just take a step towards it in some way, even if it's just Google and like looking something up, you know, just taking just one step towards a goal makes you feel better, no matter how small. And, you know, it also will never be the right time to take that big step. You know, you're always waiting for the perfect time. I was always waiting for the perfect time to open a Trova, and I did it in a freaking pandemic. So clearly that worked out super well for me. So you just can't, there's never a perfect time. You just have to go for it. And so, you know, have that 5-year plan handy, update it often, and just little by little make the step towards making it a reality.
I think that, yeah, that's a great message too. And I mean, all 3 of you, I think, are so incredibly inspiring, even to me. And, you know, and that's why I asked you to be on the show. And I'm trying to incorporate all of these things that you're saying into my own life. You know, I'm 35 years old. I've been in the wine industry for 12 years now, but there's still so much that I need to learn. And so I did take a big step this year, and I joined a mentorship program called Batonage. And it's women in hospitality, sales and marketing, viticulture, retail, and some men as well as the mentors. And I was worried at first about applying, because I was like, well, have I aged myself out of this opportunity? Or am I taking a space from someone who maybe needs these messages more than I do? And I'm so glad that I took all of those, you know, like imposter syndrome and, you know, negative thoughts, and essentially like threw them out, you know, like into the creek, because I've had such a wonderful time over these last, you know, about a month now that we've been connected with these mentors. And I've met so many incredible women, you know, who are either just starting in their career, and I've actually been able to give them advice, which has been fun, or they've been in their career for a long time, and I'm learning along the way about maybe some things that I can incorporate into my own life. And I've realized that I have my best ideas when I'm talking to somebody. You know, like I work from home, my husband works in an office. So typically I'm kind of just in my own bubble of isolation, and just having some of these conversations, whether it's one-on-one or in a group, has really opened up a lot of my bandwidth and a lot of my, you know, excitement for what is going on in our industry and where I can even see myself going. So I'm definitely looking at that kind of 5-year plan, like you said, looking at where I want to be, and then giving it life so that I can update it, and that I'm not just kind of coasting, you know, through my career, because you never do your best work if you're not, you know, fully engaged in it. So I think that, you know, of all the messages that we've had here today, I'm hoping that people can take at least one or two with them, you know, into their lives outside, you know, of this work that we're doing. So in terms of our closing remarks, I think we've given a lot of advice today, I think, to all of our listeners. So good on us for like, you know, being, having that inspirational story and like really connecting, you know, with each other. And then of course, like with our viewers, this has been a really great session. I mean, we've been going now for almost 2 hours, which we didn't even realize was going to happen. So I'm so sorry if any of you had places to be.
The winery is closed now, and all of my employees have gone home. The lights are off.
That means you get all the wine to yourself.
That's right.
I'm sorry, but your view looks amazing, and I'm so jealous.
I might just turn around and fill up my Belle Epoque a little bit. No,
I know. I mean, you have to show it off a little bit. Like that's definitely the point there. So I am just going to paste a couple of things in here. I don't think we had any other questions from anyone yet, which is awesome. That means that we've been addressing everything. So what I've done here, I've put all of our social media here if you want to follow us, if you want to check out some of the websites like Trova or Mumm Napa. I'm also going to put in, I've got a couple of websites here. We were talking a little bit about female empowerment and what the things that we can do to empower each other. And there are so many female-owned businesses and links to be able to actually, again, like I said, practice what we preach and really get ourselves out there. So I've put a couple of links into the chat. You can save the chat for your use later so that you can find some of these women who, again, are living their dreams, are starting their own companies, or have resources so that you can find more. And I think that will be that, you know, that way we can really continue to show why women are so powerful and how we can continue to be powerful in this industry. So again, thank you so much for joining our episode of Just Add Champagne. This has been such a great time, ladies. I've really enjoyed this one, and hopefully we can, like I said, I'm calling for a reunion at Mumm Napa. So if we can make this happen, we're definitely going to do it.
Sounds good. Love it.
And the drinks will be on me for sure. So thank you everyone so much for joining this episode. It will be up on YouTube so that you can share it with anyone who maybe was not able to join today. We're so excited to have had you, Cassie, Michelle, Andrea. Thank you for everything that you do, not only for this industry, but for the women that you work with. And I am hoping that we will all get to be able to be together soon. The next episode of Just Add Champagne will be in a couple weeks, and we'll be talking about sparkling cocktails. So definitely make sure that you tune in for that. So this was really special, and I will see all of you soon. I certainly hope. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Challenge.
Bye.
Bye.